What's going on? I don't want to be like a news channel for gaming or like a drama channel or anything like that. So my intentions are never to be really either one of those two. But one of the things that has, or actually a couple things that have been plaguing my Twitter timeline lately has been this whole debacle with Destiny 2 and Sony's response, and I guess what's happening with Marathon. And I thought the funny thing was like, it is unfortunate. Well, it's not really funny, but it's unfortunate for Destiny 2. I know there's still, quite a bit of people that play that game. And I understand like the sentiment in a sense because when I was playing New World, not too long ago, when the New Haven DLC came out, I was having a blast with it. I knew that game wasn't doing really well before that, and then they may release this like major content patch, which almost felt like it was like DLC in a sense, or even like a mini expansion, and it was incredible. Obviously, like a month later, they said, "Oh, we're done. We're completely done with content going forward. However, we're going to keep the servers available for a year." And then once that's gone, it's gone. Once they announced it, they already had this in the background. So we knew it was going to happen. Maybe the cost to keep it open was going to be too much, or the cost to keep a team there or to make steady content in some capacity. It just wasn't enough there to rake in, even with booming player base. And I think that's exactly kind of what you're seeing in a sense with like Destiny. I know they are coming out with new content, like their last like hoorah kind of thing, which is great. A lot of the community within Destiny 2, and maybe people outside of that community, are like trying to rally behind it to like stick it to Sony once again and be like, hey, make D3. And it's like, I get it. Like I understand for the people that actually play that game, even with its content drought, horrible stories, just lack of great content or patches or whatever the hell the case is, right? Like there's people that still stick to that game and like that's their main game for the most part, or it's in their main rotation. So they're really rallying behind it in hopes that they either one keep D2 open or two that they make D3, which I completely understand. Then you see like the resurgence of people that played it a long time ago and stopped because of either one of the things I said, whether it was just the game was just stale, it was boring or whatever. And their expectations that somehow Sony says, you know what, yeah, we're planning on shut it down. We see an inflated number that's artificially manufactured. Yeah, that's gonna make us make D3. That's just not how it works. It's they know this isn't a real player base. This isn't real numbers for them. This is just like everyone's bombarding it for their last hurrah. That's all it was, because before this announcement, it wasn't even making the top 100, or it was like floating the very bottom. So the expectations just clearly aren't there from the player base, but I know that's probably just because they're pissed off and jaded that their game's going down, which again I can understand. But it's like you got to have those realistic expectations. I see stuff like this and like people are trying to like highlight the player Steam charts, and it's like, oh, 20K or damn near 20K. It's like that's not real though, because not that long ago, in fact maybe a few days ago, before the whole announcement that they're dropping the game, this game was barely in like the tens of thousands. It's probably a little lower. It was like going back and forth. Like I said, it was teetering the very bottom of the top 100 in Steam charts. So there wasn't a whole plethora of people. Now that doesn't mean that there's not a lot. And I understand also that this is just Steam. Probably a majority of these players, at least from what I've gathered, play on console, which I can understand. But even so, like to them, the cost to keep this game open is too much. The development costs, and yeah, I mean, unfortunately, they wanted to switch over to Marathon, which that's already a sinking ship, unfortunately. But it's like the game. It doesn't seem like the player base numbers really favor Sony to continue development to like a D3. I don't see that coming, and it does suck because again, like because I was in the same boat with New Haven or New World, and it sucked. I enjoyed it, and I completely took the wind out of my sails. So like even though the game is still there, there's just no reason for me to really want to play, knowing that there's inevitable end. I know people are like trying to compare again, like, oh, we'll look at Steam charts for Marathon, and a majority of the player base is on Steam. You can kind of extrapolate from that like, oh, well, that there's definitely more people playing Destiny, which I would argue right now, sure. Before, I don't know, and I mean, unfortunately, the metric that you're trying to use for Marathon and Destiny 2, they're both failing metrics because Destiny 2 has been in a very bad place for quite a long time, and Marathon is another game that's just not doing good at all. The crowd reception to the game hasn't been positive for the most part, and so you don't want to compare a bad game, or I shouldn't say Destiny 2 is bad. It was a good game. It's just it has hit some really hard times for the last few years compared to another game that's just not doing good. So it's like you have two games that are really underperforming for Bungie, who you acquire for so much money, and your expectation is to accrue so much money, and both your games are not doing well. You're caught between a rock and a hard place for Sony. I've seen a lot of people rally behind Destiny, but to have like these artificial inflated numbers and then try to use that as a justification to make D3 or anything, it's not there. And I wouldn't then compare that to a game like Marathon. Again, it's brand new, so they already dumped so much money into it. They have to try to see that thing through to some degree. And that's where it's like I think those two kind of need to understand where they're coming from and then look at the bigger picture. And the copium kind of thing you got to set aside, because I understand it's there and it's very evident, and it's unfortunate because there's a lot of games that do that. There's a lot of games that kind of end up in that boat at the same time. The other thing I've been seeing a lot, and this is like, it's funny. It's like a really tongue-in-cheek kind of like gag, joke, but like the whole thing behind God of War and the Sony State of Play. And initially, I'll be honest, like when I thought about it, I was like, oh, God of War, like you want to see Kratos, you want to see, this hulking dude just fuck shit up. And yeah, you do. There's a lot of other franchises that do this, and it's not bad. Like, I'm not opposed to having a female protagonist in a video game, like whatsoever. And I know that there's people that are hating on that. And if it is for just the reason that it's now going to be Kratos' wife, I think that's kind of short-sighted. One of my favorite franchises is the Gears of War, and you're used to playing Marcus Phoenix. But in the last one, you were not playing Marcus Phoenix. You were playing a female protagonist. In Judgment, you were playing Baird and Cole. So it's like you do kind of deviate from the main characters in some kind of way in the game, like just tell a different side of the story, which I can understand now. Look at Resident Evil, even though like Leon Kennedy is in most of them, or in a majority of them, you do play as, like recently you're playing as Grace, another female protagonist. Not a problem. Even though you cycle between the two, I still would use that as like, it doesn't feel misplaced. Like it was still good. Darksiders had one of the writers that you played, and the last one was a female. So it's like, it should never be that you're playing a female protagonist in a video game, because that would be a stupid argument. I think maybe the direction they're going maybe isn't that great, and maybe you got to take away the fact that like Kratos is somehow still implemented in the game. You kind of have to, and they should know that, and I think they do know that, whether you like it or not. Kratos is synonymous with God of War. Like you have to have them both. It's just kind of what it is. It's like Gears of War. You still got to have some kind of like representation of Marcus Phoenix. The one thing I will say though, that in God of War that kind of threw me off was the cube thing, and I think for me that was the biggest takeaway I got from it that I didn't really quite like, was that cube. It feels so like lame to have the cube in there telling all these like witty kind of jokes, like, oh, don't look behind us, or oh, he's not behind us, is he? Like whatever the hell kind of like little things they're gonna say. That was a thing that kind of got me, was just the cube. And I think I'll still play it because it's God of War, and what I do know from them is they make a really good game. It's visually appealing. It's stunning visually, yes. Also, like the combat's always fun, engaging, brutal. So if you bring those same elements, you just have some things that maybe you're not seeing eye to eye with in the initial look at, then maybe you still give it a shot and you go from there. And then you make like an actual judgment call, or you make a good effort to really like play it and have fun. Those are the kind of things I saw, and it's been funny just seeing it. The line between copium and then just like this weird like hate campaign because your main protagonist is now a female, which isn't the end of the world. Like, it's not all doom and gloom. You kind of got to look beyond it and just have fun and kind of see where the tide goes. And who knows, like maybe these changes, at least for God of War, may be good. For Destiny, you're kind of shit out of luck, because I think once their mind's made up, they're made up. Just like New World, no one's picking up that game. And as much as I want them to, and there was so many people that came back to play, it ain't happening. And it's just, you got to kind of take it with stride and go. So that's it. We'll see what happens the next one. Later.